and welcome to the Practice as Research Network podcast. I'm very excited to have you here today, and I am going to introduce you to a very special guest who is going to talk to me about Practice as Research. So Jasmine, do you want to say hello?
Hello. Just a quick intro then. My name is Dr. Jasmine Hazel Shadrack, and I am formerly a senior lecturer of over a decade, and I am now an independent scholar and a visiting lecturer at the University of Falmouth and the University of Missouri in the States. And I do a lot of work for BIM in Berlin as well. And the idea of research as practice, or to be a pracademic, to use a term coined by Rebecca Lamont-Jiggins, is it's not just a question of thinking about the theory, because you need to be able to put that theory into practice. Yes. So you have your methodology and you have your methodological framework, and those things fuse together to help create new ontologies and epistemologies. That's kind of where I'm currently at with it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But can I ask you, I know obviously what your field of study is, but can you tell for the benefit of anyone who's listening and watching, what your field of study is?
Yeah, I'm a musician, and I'm also so it's trauma studies and disability studies, performance studies and musicology.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So the first thing that I would like to ask you really is how do you define practice as research? I mean, you've kind of already said a little bit about the epistemologies and ontologies, but at the same time, you know, how do you, within your own field, as a musicologist, define practice as research?
Well, I think it came an awful lot from my PhD, I think. I mean, I've been an extreme metal guitarist for 21 years now, and you know, also being an academic, you know, you can be on stage, you're composing, you're going to your gigs, you're moving all your equipment, and whilst all of these things are happening, you've got audience engagement and things, and something will happen and it will jar you, and you're like, oh, okay, that's really significant, that means something, I need to work out what that means. And through that process, I then realized that I was establishing a new way of thinking about these things, because there's not very many women on stage playing extreme metal. There still isn't. And I realized that I was in quite an interesting position to be able to speak from my experiences. So as a direct result of that, I discovered my methodology I think I already knew what I wanted to use as my theoretical framework, but the methodology was the thing that was, I was like, well, God, how am I going to do this? And it's all very well me experiencing these things, but how do I, you know, have a system to help me make sense of what they mean? Yes. And I discovered something called interpretive performance autoethnography. And people, it's very easy to get autoethnography wrong and think it's autobiography, and it's not. It's really difficult, because you have to examine, you are the self examining the self, and you've got to be really rigorous and hard with yourself. So if you're not prepared to stare at yourself long and hard, then don't do it. Because it can be very difficult, because a lot of they're called epiphanic moments or turning point events, you know, these things that stay with you that help to define who you are becoming. Yes. You know, sometimes they can be really nice ones, but oftentimes they can be quite traumatic ones, and it offers you a system to go back into those moments, to unpick them and disentangle them.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I agree with you. Autoethnography is one of those things that's often done badly. I'm not saying always, but it is often done badly, because people either, like you say, don't actually do that introspection well enough, or they don't look out much either, you know. So it's kind of, it suddenly becomes just, well, kind of understanding what I am and where I am, but not actually making any connections outwards either. Mm-hmm.
But so I'd been in my area of research without even realizing it was going to be my area of research, you know, for like just over 2 decades. So I'd already you know, whether I realized it or not at the time, already started to do my data gathering. But it was just like, well, how on earth am I going to, you know, make sense of all of this? But actually that wasn't my starting block. My starting block was as a survivor of domestic abuse. And, you know, when I managed to get myself out of that scenario, is always the most dangerous point. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with all of this? You know, I need a home. I need somewhere safe, but somewhere dark to put all this. You know, I was never going to create music that was going to be considered pop or anything in a major key. Well, no. So I decided to co-create a black metal band. And black metal is a subsection of extreme metal that actually originates in Scandinavia, Norway particularly, and some Sweden. And I actually, having spent, you know, well over a decade playing death metal, it just became so, the misogyny was just too much. I just couldn't handle it anymore, and I couldn't go back there because I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was like, well, I need to find a new space, right? So I created one, knowing full well that there was, you know, a wealth of, you know, understanding what the key compositional signifiers were, and, you know, what the aesthetics were. And I was very lucky, just purely through happenstance, really, to find some other people that wanted to do this too. So we started a band, and then that became the practice focus of my PhD. And, you know, we ended up being, you know, pretty successful and doing some incredible shows, and, you know, all over the world. And then I spent all of last year turning it into my monograph, which is, if I may, excuse the post.
That's exciting. Yes, that's exciting. That is exciting. Oh, I love the cover work.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wore antlers on stage. And it's, you know, I think, God, what would I have done about all of that, working through all of that trauma, had I have not somehow instinctively known that as an artistic person, I needed to house it all in an artistic, safe space. I mean, black metal isn't a safe music, but the people I was working with, I considered to be safe. And that meant a great deal to me.
So can I just ask you to kind of go back a little bit, because you were saying that, you know, that somehow the field of study in a way found you, or the practice as research in a way found you as much as you found it.
Yeah.
What's the kind of the body of literature that you use to kind of help you define that kind of relationship with you know, the practice as research?
There's two fields, actually. One of which, of course, is the interpretive performance autoethnography field, particularly this. It's only a little book, but, you know, every single word in here is gold. I literally, honestly, you should see the state of this book. I've underlined literally every single word. I mean, look at it. Like, you've really hit on something when you're suddenly underlining everything like crazy. You're like, oh God, this is it. This is the one, you know, Holy Grail. And then the other side of that was a body of work that started at about 2014 called Black Metal Theory. So it's a subsidiary theoretical frame that sits within metal music studies, and it has a very different way of engaging, and the language style is different. It's like academic prose, if such a thing would exist. It's like, you know, if the Romantic poets had been academics. It's the most beautiful language style, and it's really dark and engaging, and a bit like Kristeva, actually, her language style. It doesn't shy away from being really, am I allowed to swear or not?
Yes, you are, as far as I'm concerned.
It doesn't shy away from being really fucking dark and angry. And I thought, oh, that's my jam. I need some of that. So I started to get engaged with that and realized it was talking about all the bands that I absolutely loved. And I thought, right, I think I've found quite a significant marriage between two different oeuvres of work. And it just so happened that through the band that I'd co-started, it all started to coalesce together rather beautifully.
So one of the things that I'm really interested in is exactly what you started to kind of talk about now, and I'd like to delve in a little bit more if I may, is that, you know, when you're playing in your band, and that's obviously the practice part. Yeah. so when does the guitarist artist stop and the researcher Jasmine come in? At what point is there this transition from being only, not in any kind of pejorative way, but like purely rather than only, but you know, at what point is there no longer that pure artist Jasmine, but then the dual person, the artist researcher?
I don't think I ever separated them. And you know, when you're researching, when you're using yourself and your own experiences as your data, it's, I mean, you're leaving yourself very open and very vulnerable. I was like really aware of that right from the get-go, and particularly because I was talking about the trauma. It's, you know, with a really important question with autoethnography is you need to know when enough is enough. You need to say, right, I've done enough on that now and I need to stop. Because if you don't exercise some discipline and some control over this, you know, this could keep going on and on and on, and you would end up actually re-traumatizing yourself. So you need to be really careful. You know, and I only discovered that when I was doing all the, you know, all the editing for the monograph last year. And I thought, God, you know, there's sections of this that I can't reread this again. I'm done. I just literally cannot. So whilst there is no separation between the researcher and the researched. It's all encapsulated within one person. And as long as you acknowledge that right from the get-go, and that becomes a kind of mantra that you always fall back on, that really helps. I don't think I was ever very successful at separating these things out. You know, I could be on stage and we're playing our songs and then the audience is there, but how the audience is then engaging, yes, it's my researcher brain that's going, hang on, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I need to make sure I remember that, whilst not fucking up what I'm playing. Yes. So, you know, your brain is firing on all cylinders in that moment because there's just so much information to take in and you don't want to forget any of it. But I don't think I ever really very successfully said, oh, well, I'm on stage, so this is guitarist jazz or performer jazz, yeah, and I'm at home now with my research and my books. Now I'm researcher jazz. I don't think I was ever able to have like a nice clear definition, but the framework of the autoethnography really did help because it was taken from Jean-Paul Sartre, and so you have this capacity to be able to work backwards and then examine where you are, and having those frameworks actually really assisted me in the entire process.
So are you an autoethnographer?
I think I was for that one moment, but then because I delved so deeply into it, I don't think I'll ever not be.
Yeah.
Now I know it so intimately.
That makes sense. It makes complete sense to me. So yeah, thank you very much. Can I just ask, I mean, in a way you've kind of started to talk about that a little bit, but again, I'd like to kind of go back to it a little bit, is what do you think are the challenges of practice as research? So if anyone was going to say, oh, that's an interesting way of doing research, I want to try that, what would you tell them?
A couple of things, I think, probably. I mean, it's not autobiography. It's not just you telling somebody your life story. That's not what this is. The point is to be really rigorous and analytical. So you can have your methodology, but if you don't have a theoretical framework to apply to the data that you've gathered, what was the point of doing it? So I chose Judith Butler and Julia Kristeva because of the performative nature of their psychoanalysis.
Yes.
And I think actually I actually needed psychoanalysis to help me make sense of my own mind during those processes. And I learned so much. I discovered so much. And that's the point, isn't it, of the research, right? To just get to there's always more than one truth. But I needed to know that it was my truth and not the truth that the abuser wanted to rule. You know, it needed to be my story, not theirs. So it was a very cathartic, but very painful process. And I was really grateful that there was a musical space, a dialogical space that I could bring all of this stuff to and go, here is some really potent content for the album. Let's get it done. Because then I can cut it out of me and go, there, it's over there now. I don't have to keep it within me, because if you do that, it'll make you ill.
Yes.
You've just got to get it out of you. And, a lot of therapy is kind of based on that idea, right? Talking therapies and everything, but you know, to get it out. But so my dog is about to start coughing. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I've got two more questions. So you know, it's nearly done for the dog.
Just one last word of caution. You might not realize what you're getting into with autoethnography until you're in it, and then you're like, oh god, this is really big, this is really significant and important, and it might be too much for me emotionally. Yes. So self-care when you're doing autoethnography is really important. Don't just dive in and assume it's going to be a normal research practice, because it's not.
No, I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you, and often there is not enough support around for people that do that kind of work. I do agree with you. I agree. So how would you like to see your own practice as research develop? What's your plan for the kind of the next steps? How do you want to, you know, take that further now, or are you done with it?
Well, interestingly, due to some health issues, I'm now disabled. So I have realized that suddenly an intersecting element into all of my research practice is disability theory. And, you know, I discovered that I'm neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and I've got ADHD. And, you know, all of these things happened. You know, I discovered I got my diagnoses like one after the other. And I was like, oh my God, right, okay. So this I have to deal with this now. And so whilst I can't perhaps be on stage in the way that I was before, I've had to reimagine what that selfhood looks like. Yes. And what my composition and performance is going to be like moving forward, you know, pandemic aside. So myself and the other woman in the band, she and I decided to carry on working together. So we've decided to do that, and I'm composing a lot more now. I'm actually composing a Requiem Mass. So that's taken up quite a lot of time. I'm still doing the autoethnography, but it looks very different.
So are you saying that instead of doing a kind of more sort of, you know, written autoethnography where you're writing about your practice on stage, it's now becoming a case of the process of thinking is embedded in the composition, so in the doing?
Definitely.
Is that what's happening, that these two things are kind of merging together more?
It's really affected the way that I write, actually, which I really love, actually. I've just written a chapter for the new Music and Death book through Emerald, and I used Walter Benjamin and the idea of the creaturely, and that, you know, because through this process I've actually become a kind of altered version of what existed before, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have found autoethnography, if I hadn't have got an acquired disability. And it's just really made me engage with new lines of flight, to quote Deleuze.
That's really interesting. So how do you see the practice as research or autoethnography develop in your field? So as a part of musicology, is there scope for that?
There is scope for it, but it's interesting that if it's musicology, people would much rather be called musicologists. Yes. And they want to get to the nuts and bolts of a score, right, or a recording, and I appreciate that. So what I did was merge the two, like bring these things together. You know, you don't have to just be a musicologist or a performer, because if you're a musician, you're always analysing the music. You don't ever stop. Well, I certainly don't ever stop. It drives me crazy sometimes. I don't ever stop analysing the music. So it seemed strange to me that there was this gap in the research, generally speaking. So, you know, I'm not saying that my monograph is going to change the way people do their research or anything, but, you know, there's an example there now of, you know, it can be done. Just be careful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I must admit that it's that gap, that for me is the interesting part, is, you know, like how do you kind of make sense that on the one hand you're theoretically thinking about it and then you're practically doing it, but actually it's two separate entities. And that's exactly why I'm so interested in this whole idea of practice as research, where we can say, actually, this is a different way of doing it. Let's bring those two things together and see what happens, in a way. But at the same time, because it's not conventional research, it's probably more difficult to boundary it, and it's therefore less tangible, and that's probably why it's becoming more difficult to handle.
There's an assumption that it's biased as well.
Yes.
And, you know, you're just like, well, if I'm talking about my trauma and what happened to me and my time on stage as a guitarist, you know, nobody else can speak more fully about that than me. And I was just so relieved that this framework actually existed, that actually facilitated me being able to actually do that with you know, solid rigor, that it wasn't just autobiography. But, you know, the idea of the researched and the researcher is a very old standing academic idea, isn't it? And, you know, therefore that it will be unbiased and objective. And I think when it comes to anything to do with subjectivity, you need to be able to put your own voice in what you're doing.
Yes.
You've got to use, you know, the performative I, not, you know, that typical academic language. And, you know, I actually had to say that at the beginning of my monograph. There are times when I do use typical academic language, but there's times when I'm talking about my own experiences, I don't do that. And this is the reason why. So you do get this changing of voice that happens throughout the monograph, but it was necessary.
Thank you. But the thing is also is both voices are true voices, aren't they? They both the truth, just different elements of it, in a way. Yes.
Yeah, but one's given more respect than the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Jasmine. I really appreciate the time that you've taken today.
My pleasure.
I'm going to be making sure that we've got the link to the book as well, so that people can check out your work more closely and more carefully. And I'll look forward to future connections and further work from you in that area.